Welcome to Property Quorum. Bienvenue, welcome once again to Property Quorum, our weekly view of all things marvellous and less than marvellous happening within the property landscape. As usual, I'm joined by stalwarts, Hamish McLay of Search Convey, Juliet Baboolal of gunnercooke, and of course Chris Gilsenan of Route Home. And today we are discussing, as per usual, things that are more than irritating. Bricks and Betrayals, the scammer's delight. I felt like I should break into a rap of some sort. But before we get any further, I would like to talk to Hamish. What are we talking about here?
Well, it sort of becomes more apparent the more you actually sort of dig. And strangely, you don't necessarily notice it straight away. There's an awful lot of strange things that go on within the property sector, one way or another. Some you know about, and some are fairly obvious. However, some are so subtle and clever that you don't necessarily sort of know. And I think what the advantage is, they're not terribly obvious to me, for example, in terms of what I do relative to the property, because I just take information and basically put that information together to actually pass on. However, there are other people at the receiving end. There's Juliet looking at risk. And of course, there's Chris looking there to actually, can we actually develop this particular sort of property?
And we've had a special guest today, of Silas.
Silas, well, his experience both as an estate agent, with his investment and also with the training that he gives to people, he's got to come across some whoppers. But I think it's a matter. We do have to be careful. We hear about scams going on, all sorts of types of things, but the biggest scams, it would appear, of the moment are to do with property.
Silas, the hip hop, the hippie, etc., etc. What you must come across this kind of nonsense happening on a daily basis. Is it throughout the industry? Is this a disease that seems to be through it?
Well, it's certainly one that attracts a lot of, shall we say, parasites that will take advantage of others. I've heard various scams ranging from people renting an Airbnb for a week and then advertising it as a short-term let, getting about 20 people around the property, taking deposits off every single one and then disappearing off into the night. I've heard of the other end of the scale where you have new build developments in the city centre. Not all new developments, of course, but ones where the developers overprice them, get their favourite surveyors in, bung them a few quid, and then the surveyors are overvaluing the properties to the point where buyers are being hoodwinked into acquiring a property at, say, £200,000 that is only realistically worth about 120. So as soon as somebody gets into trouble within that development, that property is then taken back. It's sold at market value, and that reduces the valuation of every other property within that development. And so there's everything in between that seems to go on.
Ridiculous. Juliet,
utterly.
Tell me this is not a normal state of affairs, surely.
Oh, it absolutely is. And I think the key word that Silas used, parasites, what happens is you've got a chain of people, a chain of parasites that are involved. So you might have a rogue valuer, a rogue solicitor, and a rogue client. I remember one of my first frauds, and this was many, many years ago.
One of my first frauds?
Yeah, so many. I was at because everyone uses a solicitor's PI to back them up. They always think, there's an issue here. We'll just claim on the solicitor's PI. They've got enough cover. But we had someone a rogue borrower solicitor, draw down over £20 million of mortgage monies in one day with an intention to run away with those monies. And I remember calling up the sellers' solicitors to see whether or not they'd had the money off the borrower solicitors, and they said no. And that raised alarm bells, and we were able to get the money back. But by the time we sourced the monies, it was sent to one of those, those money agencies, not a bank. It was done through those, like Western Union, one of those. And so it's really hard to trace money when you've done that. So it's one of those things you've always got to be vigilant. And it's the old saying, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And you know, those things that you see on Instagram and TikTok, where it's like, get rich quick, come to this property course, pay me the £10,000 to £12,000. You know, the reality is, if you're buying a dream and you're not actually doing your diligence, doing your background checks, you know, you probably will get bitten. So it's really important to do your homework. And usually these parasites leave gaps, and you will discover those gaps. So it's really important on you, the consumer, whoever you're dealing with, to actually do checks on them.
So if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and sounds like a duck, and it might not be a duck.
Yeah, here's the other thing. I mean, in this day and age where you've got Google, okay, I often act for borrowers, and I'll have a lender say to me, "Oh, we just found this out," and I thought, "But could you not have Googled that before and found out some history about them? Because it's all over." You know, so the reality is, you've got some tools that you know would actually give you a certain level of information to start with, and then, you know, based on what you found, you can then do some more digging.
Chris, tell me this isn't normalised in your neck of the woods.
I don't think it's necessarily normalised. I think because because property has such a big ticket value, it's seen as a target. At the very least, it's an attractive target for people to kind of make a beeline for. But yeah, there's scores of stories of different types of scams and things that go on in our industry. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we've had the conversation before about people not turning up at an auction and bidding on stuff they've not seen, and then opening the door and it's just the facade of the house that's standing. You got option, yeah, lease options, and options are big in our industry, but now much more heavily regulated than when they first really jumped onto the scene. Right. Yeah, back in the day, people were taking options on people's properties with the view to letting them continue to reside in the property, and then kicking them out as soon as they had control of the property. It's really ruthless stuff. Thankfully, that's now regulated activity. All sorts of horrible scams, and yeah, like Silas and Juliet have said, it attracts the parasites and the real dregs of society, thinking that they can take advantage of people. So yeah, it's really important to have people behind you that you can trust and protect you to some extent, but also you need to go into everything with your eyes wide open and not relinquish like the fact that you do need to do some due diligence yourself.
But scams seem to be it's the scourge of modern society. Hamish,
I mean,
what can we do?
Well, I think we just have to sort of look at it. I mean, funnily enough, in the last sort of 3 to 4 months, I've had 2 instances very, very similar, not to do with property. It was, sorry, Dad, broken my phone, couldn't use my phone, and all my stuff that I need for the bank is on my phone. You couldn't just bung me over. And because I'm at my friends, you couldn't pop it into their bank account for me, could you? I've got to get £150 into the bank or whatever. It's only small scale. However, it is so easy to actually sort of do it. If you're very busy doing something, you might quite poor lass. The thing is, on the first occasion, I phoned her up and said, "What's happened to your phone then?" And she answered me straight away. So we obviously knew there was something sort of shady going on. I think some of them are so subtle. And I think sort of Silas pointed this sort of type of thing out where people actually can do it. And whether it's Airbnb or the other thing is, of course, to find somebody who's on holiday. And I think what it's driven by, and we've spoken about this before, the dire shortage of property stock we have in the UK. So some people are desperate to find somewhere. So it's very, very easy to sort of say to them, right, we've got this place come up, because I don't know how they perhaps look at their emails and stuff like that, realise they really want to get into a place. So they'll actually sort of hit them and say, look, we can guarantee you this if you drop us just £300 deposit. And things like that, we don't hear about them because once people have done it, they don't like to admit to it either.
Well, no, it sounds like a personal black mark. Look,
and also the other thing, actually, actually report anything to the fraud squad. If you ever tried to do it, it's an absolute complete and utter pain. What astounds me, somebody stole your bank card, and somebody picked up one of mine from somewhere or other in the last sort of 12 months or so. And I had to prove they managed to break in and start using my card, which obviously it was all paid back anyway. However, for me to actually identify myself to my own bleeding bank, if you know how these scammers do it, they get in there and get this stuff done. And here we are trying to protect ourselves, and we're the innocent ones.
Wow. Silas, this seems to be endemic in modern society, the desperate need for one part of society to try and scam the rest of us. Apart from just being vigilant, which seems to be the note that comes through from Juliet, Hamish and Chris, is there anything else we can do?
I think, to be fair, that is the main thing. The vigilance is, I think there's an element of not listening to the little voice within. So we get sidetracked with this whole idea of I want what society projects as the idea of success, i.e. the property portfolio, the car, the whatever. Oh, this is a great price, or this is an opportunity not to be missed. And unfortunately, the one thing that has come into sales and online at the moment is all of this psychology and sales psychology about driving people to take action on something that may not be right for them. And I've worked in that industry of property education sales, and you would be absolutely shocked what goes on. I mean, if I told you the setup, you'd never speak to me again. It was absolutely horrific to watch how these people were literally farmed through a process of turning up to a seminar, learning for 3 days, and then parting with anywhere between £10,000 and £30,000. And whilst the organisation that I work with was one of the better ones, I will say that there are people that go to those courses, do 1 or 2 property deals, and then go out and teach the exact same stuff to other people for £10,000, £20,000, £30,000. And I think that there's operators in the market at the moment who really should not have a forum to do that, and they've got hundreds and hundreds of followers, if not thousands, that they're taking money off and delivering absolutely nothing. So you have to do the due diligence, and you have to look at the whites of the eyes of the person talking to you and understand, are they selling me a bill of goods here, or have they actually been there, done that, got the t-shirt and been authentic?
Chris, dare I say it, when you got your start in the property game some 15 years ago or thereabouts, it was through one of the things that Silas referred to. You just knew when to get out and make use of the knowledge you'd got without being trammeled into paying vast fortunes.
You know what? It was probably by chance that I fell into a training funnel from a more reputable one of those companies.
Could it have been so easily one of the scammy ones?
Yeah. Being young and stupid at the time, I could have fallen into one of the more scammy ones. Yeah, and I fully agree with Silas. There are some very disreputable ones that are active right now. So I think even more so than ever, you have to be super cautious with who you're taking your advice from. And yeah, you want to know that they do have track record, form, capability, and really honesty and integrity in their business dealings, their transactions. And that's someone you probably want to work with.
But if you're being charged tens of thousands for knowledge,
I think that industry has also shifted significantly over the last 10 to 15 years or so, with the advent of Facebook coming to such extraordinary scale, with the advent of different online learning platforms now. I think that old model has kind of died a death in some ways, and you can get access to all that information at a much lower price point. And then I think you kind of need to think about coupling that with someone to almost go through that hand-holding experience who has walked the walk that you want to go through. It comes back to team again. It's just another member of your team that you probably want to collaborate with and follow the path of, it's the old one, it's follow the path of successful people.
Yes. So I suppose it's make sure you mix with people who have already demonstrated success and then learning from them. Juliet, I see you nodding away. What are your thoughts?
I think there's always checks and balances in terms of discerning whether there's a scam involved, etc. The problem is when you are led by emotion and you're not really thinking, you haven't got that objective hat in, you sometimes jump in hook, line and sinker, someone wanting to make some money, some quick money on a deal. I mean, there really is no quick fix. And yes, you might get a property and spin it and make a profit, but you still have to pay tax on that potentially. So, there is no quick fix. I always say to consumers, look, get yourself on the land registry, because consumers can get accounts now, and play around with the land registry. You can download office copies. If you're going to auction and you know your property address, you can do a map search and find out exactly where that property is and what might affect the value of that property and assist you in the bidding. So there's a lot of homework and information available to you without you going to third parties. And while someone might look at the land registry's website and think, I haven't got a clue, the reality is it's just like anything. You play around with it, you understand it a bit more, and you kind of self-educate so that third party can't come and then take advantage of you. I remember when I started off law, I was a mortgage litigator. I went to court to repossess a property on behalf of a client, and the proprietor, the owner, showed up and said, that's not me. I never borrowed any money from you. So there was a fraudster who pretended to be this guy and borrowed the money, was nowhere in sight. Now you think, well, how could a valuer have access to the flat to do the valuation? How could, they found out that this site, it was unencumbered, which means it had no mortgage at the time when my lender was lending, and the guy didn't live at the property, so it was vacant. And these fraudsters, the solicitor, the valuer, they got involved, and this poor man, came to court and said, I didn't borrow your money. You're wrong. And our mortgage was set aside. And what was the recourse there? We could claim at the land registry's indemnity fund. But you don't want to get yourself in that situation. You want to do your homework. And I think all of us on the panel, we're drumming on the fact that, look, there are things you can do. Speak to people. Don't speak to one person running a course. Speak to someone else and compare. What are you getting? What are they charging? Speak to someone who's attended the course. Get referees and credentials and things like that. But the key thing is do your homework.
Hamish, would you summarize and take us home?
Well, I think, it was Chris that re-emphasized the whole sort of aspect. It's getting the right people around us to speak to. And as we actually know, we're all experienced people here. And we're very fortunate. We've had Wendy come on here before, Wendy Gibson, that Silas knows as well. If you can actually meet up with somebody like that they will point you in the direction. We'd all love to be knowledgeable. We'd all love to know and have the knowledge to go about things the right way. And as I said in sort of some of my articles that I've written, I'm not going to be caught out. I know what I'm doing. I'm clever enough. But you aren't the expert until somebody's told you about the latest sort of scam and sort of everything sort of else about it. So it's really, don't react on your own. And I think that was a good aspect that Juliet also mentioned, because properties are very much an emotional thing too. Particularly if you're striving so hard and you've just got your money together and you want to buy that first property, you really need to be speaking to the right people about it, because so many people can lead you down the sort of wrong way. And people speak to the right people and you'll find value and you'll actually win through that.
Well, as usual, I've been educated. I hope you guys out there found this useful. Raised me to thank our stalwarts, Juliet Baboolal of gunnercooke, Hamish McLay of Search and Convey, of course, Chris Gilsenan of Root Home, and our special guest today of Silas J. Lees of Wiggy Wham. Now, before we go, Silas, I believe you have a damn fine, useful book. Do you happen to have it nearby? You could.
Well, thank you, Gareth.
Sorry, I know you didn't realise I was going.
Sorry,
I think more people should read this thing and be educated. What is it called, please?
100%. It really just. So the book is called Home Buyer Secrets, and I've basically taken 25 years plus experience in the property world and tried to condense it down into as short a dialogue as possible to really help guide and steer people away from making these sorts of errors. And when you've bought and sold properties within 3 days, you learn how to do things very differently to the mainstream. And I think that's really what I'm encouraging people to realize, is that there are different ways of doing things, and with a little bit of knowledge, you can save yourself an absolute fortune.
So that's called, again, one last time?
Home Buyer Secrets.
Home Buyer Secrets. Can you buy it off Amazon or perfect?
You
so guys,
indeed.
Home Buyer Secrets. Go and have a look it up. It's probably worth a damn good read. Silas,
absolutely.
Silas is no spring chicken in this game. He's been around the block. Sorry, I don't want to perhaps diminish your personal achievements. You've seen it, you've done it, and you've got several T-shirts. I suspect reading this might help you. But thank you, one and all, for attending. Remember, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars. Please do remember to wear a bit of sunscreen and look after your mental health. Bye-bye all.